You're crouched at the edge of a kill site. It's roughly 12,000 years ago, somewhere on the open grassland, and the animal on the ground took 6 people to bring down. Nobody here owns this meat, not yet. Right now, in this exact moment, 30 pairs of eyes are deciding who eats first. And it isn't the guy who threw the winning spear. It's not like ordering takeout and eating it alone on your couch while you scroll through your phone, pretending you're too busy to answer texts from people who love you. There was no my food. There was just food, and a group of humans figuring out, in real time, who got to touch it. This is the story of whether ancient tribes actually shared their food, and the answer is stranger, more calculated, and honestly more impressive than the campfire Kumbaya version most of us grew up picturing. Here's what most people assume. We picture prehistoric sharing as some kind of warm, instinctive kindness, cavemen sitting in a circle passing meat around because they loved each other, because scarcity made them generous, because that's just what good people do. It's a nice story. It's also mostly wrong. What anthropologists have actually found, both in the archaeological record and in living hunter-gatherer societies today, is that sharing wasn't really about kindness at all. It was about math. Cold, calculated survival math, dressed up to look like generosity. Let's start with the foundation, because you need to understand exactly how much was at stake. For the overwhelming majority of human history, we're talking roughly 200,000 years, compared to the mere 12,000 years since agriculture showed up. Humans lived as hunter-gatherers, and hunting large game is a genuinely terrible way to guarantee dinner. A skilled hunter with a spear or a bow, going after something like an antelope or a wild pig, fails far more often than he succeeds. Some studies of modern hunter-gatherer groups put failure rates at over half of all hunts. Half. Meaning on any given day, there's a real chance you go out, you do everything right, and you come home with nothing. Now here's the mechanism, and this is where it gets interesting. If failure is that common, and food doesn't keep no refrigeration, no salt curing on a large scale, meat rotting within days in the heat, then a lone hunter who succeeds today and hoards his kill is sitting on a pile of food that's about to go bad anyway. Meanwhile, the guy next to him who failed today might succeed tomorrow. So the smartest possible strategy, evolutionarily speaking, isn't hoarding. It's banking favors in other people's memories. You give away meat you can't use anyway, in exchange for the near certainty that when you fail, someone else will do the same for you. It's not generosity. It's insurance. It just happens to look identical to generosity from the outside. Let's talk about the Hadza, because they make this almost uncomfortably clear. The Hadza are a hunter-gatherer community in northern Tanzania, and they're one of the last groups on Earth still living largely off wild foraging and hunting, which makes them one of anthropology's most studied living windows into how our ancestors likely operated. Researchers who've spent time with Hadza camps describe something anthropologists call demand sharing, meaning if you have food and someone asks for it, you give it. Not because you feel like it, because saying no is almost socially unthinkable. There's no polite way to hoard in a Hadza camp. Try it, and you don't just lose food, you lose your entire safety net, because the next time you fail to bring anything home, nobody's going to remember you fondly. Now here's the question that should be sitting in the back of your mind. If it's basically mandatory, is it really sharing? Or is it just a tax you can't refuse to pay? That question gets even stranger once you look at the Jew/Hoansi people of the Kalahari Desert in southern Africa, studied extensively by anthropologists starting in the 1960s. Among the Jew/Hoansi, there's a documented practice where successful hunters are expected, culturally required really, to downplay their own kill. A hunter comes back with a giant antelope, and instead of announcing it proudly, he's supposed to describe it as scrawny, barely worth the trip, hardly anything at all. The Jews/Hoansi themselves have a phrase for why, when a young man kills a big animal, he comes to think of himself as a chief or a big man, and the rest of us won't stand for that. So elders deliberately mock the meat, not because they don't want it, they absolutely want it, but because inflating a hunter's ego is dangerous for group survival. Pride breaks cooperation, and cooperation is the actual technology keeping everyone alive. Let's go even further back, because this behavior isn't just cultural. There's a real case that it's ancient enough to be biological. At a site called Boxgrove in southern England, dated to around 500,000 years ago, archaeologists found butchered horse bones with cut marks from multiple different stone tools made by multiple different individuals, all working the same carcass. Not one hunter feeding himself. A group systematically dividing a single animal. That's Homo heidelbergensis, not even our own species yet, a full 500,000 years before anyone would call themselves human, already showing behavior that looks a lot like organized group-based meat distribution. And here's where it gets genuinely wild. This isn't just a human thing. Primatologists studying chimpanzees have documented something eerily similar. When chimps hunt colobus monkeys, which they do cooperatively, in coordinated groups, the meat afterward doesn't just go to whoever grabbed it first. It gets distributed, often specifically to individuals who help defend group members, or to females, in patterns that look suspiciously like political favor trading. Researchers have a term for this: tolerated theft. The alpha technically could keep it all. He doesn't, because letting others take a share, or actively handing pieces out, keeps the coalition around him intact. Sound familiar? It should. It's the same insurance logic, just running on chimpanzee hardware millions of years before anyone built a campfire. Now here's where we have to be careful, because it's tempting to romanticize all of this into one big prehistoric utopia of equality. It wasn't. Meat sharing was often intensely political. Anthropologist Christopher Bum, who spent decades studying egalitarian hunter-gatherer societies, documented what he called reverse dominance hierarchies, essentially groups actively, deliberately, sometimes violently suppressing anyone who tried to hoard power or resources. Bum found accounts of hunters being mocked, shamed, ostracized, and in extreme documented cases, even killed by their own group for repeatedly trying to dominate food distribution. Sharing wasn't just encouraged. In some groups, refusing to share was treated as one of the most serious social crimes a person could commit, up there with murder. Let's also talk about something that rarely comes up in this conversation. Not all food was shared equally, and that matters. Anthropological studies across dozens of hunter-gatherer societies have found a consistent pattern. Big game, meat from large kills, gets shared widely across the whole camp. Small game, and especially gathered foods like nuts, roots, and berries, which in most hunter-gatherer societies were gathered primarily by women and made up the majority of daily caloric intake, often stayed within the immediate family, meaning the image of total, undifferentiated communal sharing is wrong. It was targeted. Big, unpredictable, hard-to-preserve windfalls got spread wide because that's where the insurance math made sense. Small, reliable, everyday food stayed close to home because there was no need to bank a favor on it. So was it real generosity, or was it just a very old, very effective insurance policy wearing a friendly face? Here's the uncomfortable answer, probably both, tangled together so thoroughly that even the people doing it might not have known which one they were practicing on any given day. Humans are extremely good at feeling genuine warmth toward the exact behaviors that also happen to keep us alive. That's not hypocrisy. That's just how evolution built emotion. It doesn't waste a good feeling on a behavior it can't also make you love. Now here's the pivot, because this story doesn't stay warm forever. Fast forward through agriculture, through the invention of storage, through granaries and salt curing and eventually refrigeration, and something fundamental breaks. Once you can store food indefinitely, once you can lock a granary and defend it instead of a person, the entire insurance logic collapses. You no longer need your neighbor to remember your kindness because you have a locked door instead. Some archaeologists point to exactly this shift, the move from perishable, shareable food to storable, hoardable food, as one of the origins of real inequality. The origin of the idea that food could belong to one person while others starved in full view of it. For 200,000 years, that idea was almost unthinkable. Then storage made it not just thinkable, but normal. So did ancient tribes actually share their food? We don't know the full texture of it, and we probably never will. Most of what happened around 10,000 campfires never left a trace anyone could dig up. But between the butchered bones at Boxgrove, the demand-sharing rules of the Hadza, the deliberately mocked kills of the Jew/Hoansi, the tolerated theft of hunting chimpanzees, and Christopher Boehm's accounts of hunters punished for hoarding, one thing becomes hard to deny. Sharing wasn't a nice bonus feature of prehistoric life, it was load-bearing. Remove it, and the whole structure of survival collapses with it. There's something worth sitting with in all of that. Every time you split a bill evenly, even though you ordered less. Every time you cover a co-worker's shift, knowing they'll cover yours someday. Every time you hand a stranger's kid back their dropped toy without even thinking about it. You're running software that's been in continuous use for 250,000 years. It wasn't written by a philosopher, it was written by hunger. So next time you're splitting a pizza with people you barely know, or passing food around a table at a holiday you didn't plan, notice it. You're not